Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. My name is Paul, the Canadian Snowman, here once again with another awesome video, the Great Toyota War. For some reason, I thought this was just about like cars, like manufacturing. I don't know, like a war between manufacturers, be like Toyota and Honda, whatever. I was like, but obviously not, because when I pulled up to put a photo, I guess, of a Toyota, I did get a Toyota, but apparently there's guns on it, so I guess this is I don't know. I don't know why it's called a Toyota War. I guess they drive Toyotas. I don't know. But I came across it. Looks very interesting. This is from Feature History. I think I've done one other video from Feature History. I think it was something on Spain, if I remember correctly. But it's been like months and months since I've done a video from Feature History, so this will be interesting, and I guess another new take from an. I kind of say it's like a new channel because it's been so long since I've been there. I kind of forget how things are. If I remember correctly, they talk really fast, so maybe I wonder if this is kind of the same if I remember correctly. But anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button below. I'd really appreciate it. And check out what the Toyota War is. I was looking for something like short and interesting, and this definitely crossed my path, and I thought this was a cool video to check out. But yeah, I'd like you to like and subscribe. Let's check it out.
A Curiosity Stream. Get 31 days of streaming completely free using the link curiositystream.com/featurehistory, or you can wait till the end. Hello and welcome back to Featurette. Because you weren't expecting that, were you? Me to start a series and actually continue it. But based on the reception to my last video on cars, you were all very, very disappointed I didn't talk about technicals, and specifically the Toyota Hilux. So what better way to make amends than do a whole video on Toyotas, highlighting the Great Toyota War. And then you guys can repay the favour by helping me pay the bills. Yeah? Sick. So, to set the scene of the Toyota War, we're going to have to set the scene. It's the 60s, and Africa has just recently been split from its European colonisers, and with all great changes in history, it's accompanied by a lot of violence. All the new nations were finding their footing, and civil wars, coups, and rebellions were everywhere.
It's kind of like a lot of history. Every time, like just as an example, like when the British, they colonized an area, they basically they left it like, hey, basically left places to fend for themselves. I'm sorry, the French, everyone's, a lot of places, countries have done the same thing, but they kind of like, they don't really have the resources. They just after World War I and II, they don't have the resources, so they can't really occupy these countries anymore, so they have to pull out. I mean, basically, yeah, these countries have to fend for themselves, and yeah, civil war, obviously, because there's gonna be a vacuum, power vacuum to who's gonna take power, whatever. I don't know, but anyways, did I leave Toyotas behind?
So it would be in 1969 that the now notorious and now also dead dictator Muammar Gaddafi would lead a coup in his home of Libya. Gaddafi came to power on an agenda of Arab nationalism, and it was fundamental to him that he took a stand for decolonization, and also to secure strategic resources and political assets for his militaristic regime. These combined goals led to him pursuing claim on the Aouzou Strip, a section of land on Libya's border with the former French colony and currently civil war-ridden Chad. Gaddafi's intervention in his southern neighbours' affairs started with him securing allegiance and supplying rebel groups against Chad's authoritarian president, Francois Tombouctou. However, he was soon able to enter negotiations and just straight up buy the Aouzou Strip for £40 million.
Wow.
It was a sizable area of land, but it was mostly desert with a small population that was concentrated in the town of Aouzou. Its only attraction was its rumoured uranium deposits, but also its annexation just served as a fantastic display of Libyan prowess. So for 3 straight years, Libya fair and square owned the Aouzou Strip, up until in 1975, Francois Tombouctou was overthrown, and the rebel groups responsible were not fans of their former dictator's Libyan appeasement. Gaddafi would reopen hostilities and continue his support for Libyan friendly rebels against the new government. Across a series of interventions by the Libyan military directly and also a handful from France in support of Chad, a line would be drawn in 1983, separating government and rebel forces. Libya was left with virtual control of northern Chad. Now, the Libyan military far outclassed the poorly equipped Chadian militias. Libya was stocked with old Soviet aircraft, armour and artillery and held control over the admittedly few strategic garrisons in the Chadian Sahara. However, by 1987, the Libyans had lost the support of the local rebels, and so despite their resources, the Libyan defence consisted of isolated conscripts with low morale. The Chadian government, under the leadership of Hissini Habre, would be provided with 400 Toyota Hilux and Land Cruiser Utes, ready to be equipped with anti-tank guided missiles, light anti-air, heavy machine guns, and so on. The French had provided the Chadians the unconventional weapons, as well as pledging air support, all in hopes of seeing the Chadians reclaim the north from Libya.
Okay.
The administration that wants to ban us from owning AR-15s just handed over 359,000.
It may sound pretty weird that Chad's international support came in the form of civilian Toyotas, but improvising fighting vehicles wasn't an unfounded tactic. In fact, stretching the definition of a vehicle, you can point to First World War Russian Tachankas as an early example. Horse-drawn machine guns that were perfect for hit-and-run combat on the wide-open Eastern Front.
Wow.
The British Commonwealth iterated on that in the Second World
I never knew that was even a thing. I guess that makes sense, because in the First World War, cars, were just a very new thing, horses are definitely better off-road than I guess a car was. And they had machine guns back then, so obviously, yeah, it makes sense having the back of a carriage. Cool.
War, when they armed light jeeps with turrets for use in the long-range desert group, who saw great success in their North African raids. The historical tactic, though, falls apart in tough mountainous and jungle warfare, which was the bulk of most post-Second World War conflicts, that is, up until the 80s. So the Chadians would make the most of these Toyotas when they opened the offensive against Libya by striking the well-fortified communication base in Fada. Defended by 2,000 Libyans bolstered by armour and artillery, they were defeated by 5,000 men, French air support, and some trusty Japanese Utes. After this success, they moved for Libya's airstrip, defended by even more.
Aren't Toyotas like the most reliable vehicle you can buy? Like I have a Honda CRV, and it's Japanese, and I consider it like has really good, reviews and whatnot. I consider my vehicle that runs really good. But I think isn't Toyota like one step like above a Honda? Isn't it like the top of the top? I believe it is. Maybe someone in the comments can let me know who knows a bit more about cars, but
More armour. After this success, they moved for Libya's airstrip, defended by even more armour, artillery, air force, and even a minefield.
Damn.
French air support forced the Libyans to stay grounded, and the Chadians discovered that when driving 100 km an hour, they didn't trigger the mines and could roll straight up to the airstrip. Another victory for the ragtag army. As soon as Habre had secured...
Holy crap, so basically, yeah, they're very mobile, and they can just hit and run tactics on those things, because obviously, if they're grounded or whatever, those planes aren't going to be able to attack them, and the tanks are pretty slow, right? And yeah, I guess it just makes sense. Wow, okay, so Toyotas are kicking butt. All right, Toyota War, okay, I'm following.
Another victory for the ragtag army. As soon as Habre had secured northern Chad in those few short months, he was ready to continue the initiative and take back the Aouzou Strip. Now that was against the French's wishes, and so now the Chadians moved without air support. They were able to take the town of Aouzou, but when met with Libyan counterattacks, were forced to abandon it. These Toyota tactics just wouldn't work when it came to defending. So in September 2000, Chadians drove across the border into Libya. Blacked out under moonlight, concealing themselves in the valleys and hills, they made their way north of Libya's main airbase, Matan el Sara. Garrisoned by 2,500 men, over 70 tanks, 30 APCs and around 30 aircraft, the Chadians were outnumbered and easily outgunned. But their raid came as such a surprise when they were spotted coming from the north. It was believed to be reinforcements, and by the time it was realised they weren't, they had reached the airbase. The cars were too agile to be targeted accurately by aircraft and were able to strafe and down tanks with surprising efficiency. Libyan casualties were between 1,000 and 1,700 men.
Damn.
All their vehicles were downed and their airstrips were torn up. The Chadians had lost 65 men and a few Toyotas. The raiders left as soon as they had arrived, and the defeat was crushing to Gaddafi's military strongman image. It was then the dictator tried to save face and took a conciliatory outlook, signing a ceasefire and letting go of the Aouzou Strip back to Chad, which was, in his words, his gift to Africa. The Chadians' underdog victory hit headlines in the West, and it became known as the Great Toyota War. However, as we all know, entering the 21st century, the use of Toyotas and other four-wheel drive utes in war would become very commonplace. The Somali civil war in the 90s saw the fall of their national army, and armoured vehicles became impossible to finance and run, and so the warlords and their factions quickly took to creating what became known as technicals. Using Toyotas and other brands of four-wheel drive utes, they would be kitted out with all the same guns used in the Chadians' war. These cars became symbols of prestige for militias, and the same commander that had beaten back the US at the Battle of Mogadishu, Mohammed Farah Aidid, was carried to his grave in the tray of a Toyota Land Cruiser.
Wow.
And Somalia is the reason we call these gun cars technicals. Non-governmental organisations working in the country couldn't bring in their own private security, and so using technical assistance grants, hired local militias for protection, and these Somali-sourced security services just about always ran these vehicles. As wars have continued to spring up in the open desert environments such as Iraq, Afghanistan and Syria, the technicals appeared more and more. In Afghanistan, even the well-funded US Special Forces took to using the vehicles for recon operations. So many non-state militias and weak armed forces employed the use of technicals. The Islamic State had made a name for itself with its endless convoys of Land Cruisers. The vehicles, while not armoured and not designed for war, are designed perfectly for a budget. Their speed allows them to avoid unfavourable fights and respond quickly to where they're needed. They require no specialised training to drive, they're so much more fuel efficient compared to a tank, and just about anyone with a spanner, 2 hands and 1 functional brain can maintain them. So it's given all these reasons that they're now iconic in 21st century conflict, where war is closely associated with desert combat and militia fighters.
Yeah, you're not going to see no Ford or Chevy, right? You know? Yeah, Toyota, man, it's like... did you guys get paid by Toyota for, like, advertising?
And that's why today, even modern armies are beginning to research and develop in hosting their own fleets of technical-like vehicles. Russia has begun production on its domestically made UAZ Patriot, which is designed to drive like a Hilux, be reliable like a Hilux, and cost as much as a Hilux, just without the Toyota badge. And an interesting side note to add, it is such an advantage to have your military rolling around on as least fuel as possible, especially when all the fighting and destruction is happening on the very oil fields you'd need to fuel your car. Oil is important in war, it's important to politics, and it's important in me segueing into the sponsor, the Curiosity Stream. Because on Curiosity Stream, I was able to watch an old ABC documentary called Crude, which tells you just...
Alright, well, that's the end of the video. Well, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of countries, some countries, you know, go to war for the purpose, because oil isn't involved, you know, and because, you know, obviously if money's not oil, money, whatever's not involved, they're not going to go to war, you know, but yet to use, for politics-wise, they'll use a different reason, you know, but obviously a lot of the reasoning down under is all money-based. But anyways, if you know what I mean. But anyways, yeah, Toyota War, it seemed like half of that was like a Toyota commercial. That was really cool. Like, I knew nothing about this, but like, it makes sense, because, I don't know, like, when it can't, what comes to mind, is like, I don't know if any of you watched the movie Back to the Future, where the Libyans, you know, the doc stole the plutonium. The Libyans came to kill him. They came in a Toyota with the gunner on there. I have no idea if any of you know what I'm talking about, but like that came to mind when they were discussing the Toyota, the Libyans, whatever. I thought that was super interesting. But yeah, this was definitely cool, and how the Toyotas, dismounting some big machine guns in the back, took down like real armies with planes and tanks and being outnumbered and whatnot, and it really, really worked. I guess this is kind of the beginning of this, so like the armies didn't know how to counteract it and whatnot, and obviously, like they said, it became a more regular thing. So you're probably had a bunch of same thing going on both sides, whatever wars, you want to bring up, I mean, each side probably had the same kind of tactics, but like, yeah, definitely a very cheap version of it. I mean, you save on gas. I mean, buying a Toyota is a lot cheaper than, you probably buy like 100 Toyotas for the same price you could buy a tank kind of thing. And like very less gas, and like I said, anyone could operate it, as long as you know how to drive and you know how to shoot a gun, then pretty much you could operate, this Toyota war machine. But anyways, guys, let me know your thoughts below. What you thought. Like, never intended on doing this at all. I just saw the name of the Toyota War and it just piqued my interest, and so I want to do a video on it. And I honestly thought it was some kind of like war between manufacturers until I kind of Googled it to find an image, and then I seen all the Toyotas with guns on them. Like, okay, this is not what I thought it was, but let's do it anyway, and I'm glad I did. But anyways, guys, please hit that like and subscribe button below. I'd really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you check out my other content. I do a different kind of war content, geography content if you're new here, and all that good stuff. But anyways, peace. Catch you guys in future videos. You guys are awesome. I am out.